live through, most interviews have had to be virtual. In fact, most of work has mostly transitioned to remote work now. Most folks, if you're in tech space, you're likely working from home. You've probably not seen the inside of an office space for a little while. I've noticed this in the last couple of years. Um, every the last 2 years, most of the students I've trained and I've worked with, they are all the times they do interviews. It's all been virtual. It's been remote interviews. I can't recall um, any of my students in recent times who has gone into an office space to do an interview. And so I feel like I've seen the trend change, and while we are hopefully past the worst of COVID, I don't see a reverse to how things used to be before. Like just everybody going back and working in the office all the time. I think people have adjusted to this new normal, and I think it's going to continue, and it's a good thing. Being able to work from home on your terms, avoid traffic if you live in Atlanta, like I do, or any of this, metro cities, traffic can be painful and depressing. So most job interviews going forward are going to be remote through some tools, maybe Zoom, Teams, or maybe Google Meets, any other platforms, right? There's so many of them. So today I want to talk about some mistakes we've made, or people have made, or people normally make, right, when they go on virtual interviews. And this, I found a really nice article from one of the bigger agencies that kind of started talking about this topic, and I wanted to kind of go at it a bit more. So the next 15-20 minutes, I want to spend some time talking on mistakes to avoid when you're doing your virtual interviews. Because if you're in the job market, chances are you've either done virtual interviews, so for you this is maybe what to correct for the next one. If you're just hitting the market, I guarantee you're going to be doing interviews that will be through Teams or Zoom, or Google Meet or WebEx or any of those platforms. The first one is bad camera crop and focus. Right, just having, like, right now as I'm talking, I want to be focused on who my audience is. Right, if I'm talking to you here, I'm looking at you in the eye. If I'm looking, like, look at where the camera is. If you're using your computer webcam, you can look into it, right? So it feels like you're making eye contact. It gives that illusion of an eye contact being made. So make sure your camera is positioned correctly. Don't be all over the place. You're not doing a live stream. You're an actual interview. So focus on the person you're talking to, right? Focus on them, especially if it's like one-on-one interview where you have this person staring at you, and even if it's a panel interview, but then all of them are in different rooms. All of the panelists are in different rooms. Most of them are likely staring at you. They believe looking into the camera is looking at you, and so you looking back at the camera, direct on the focus, is you also looking back at them. You're making eye contact. That's something you would normally do. So people sometimes lose focus, maybe because you have material by the side you're referencing, and so, like myself, I have my notes, and so I'm looking at my notes and I'm looking at the camera and I'm looking in different places. It works for what I'm doing now, but if I was in an interview, this is really bad, right? So focus is important. Don't just make sure your camera angles are correct. Make sure you're staring into the camera. The second point is kind of like in line. So first one, bad camera focus. That's improper position of your camera. Keep that in mind. Make sure that it's positioned properly. You have your good side. All right. The next point I want to talk about is staring into space. Right. You don't just want to stare into nothing. Again, I don't want to be like, hey, no, who you're talking to? They're right here. They're looking at you. Right. They're looking right there at you, and so you want to focus on the people you're speaking to. Don't just stare at anything else. That's why I always recommend don't have a second screen to avoid distraction, to avoid the temptation to look somewhere else, right? And then don't, even if you're asked a question that throws you off, or maybe you need to think on, still stay engaged with your eyes, right? It's not you look lost for a second. Don't stare into space. Don't be lost, and don't seem distracted as well, right? So staring into space can be you're distracted. You're trying to understand what somebody over here is saying while you have an interview going on. Maybe you, because you have a virtual background and you know they don't see what's behind, somebody has walked past and distracted you and you're turning. I don't know if anyone has noticed that happening, right? If you've had meetings where, okay, I put on a virtual background, so now it looks like I'm in a nice office, but really I'm in my bedroom and my family members are behind me, and I've told them to shut up and they're not keeping quiet. And, I take a moment to shoot somebody. That's a bad look, right? Even though it's virtual, you have to think of it like you're in the same room. It's still a virtual room. So you're in the same space with these people who are talking to you, who are looking to find out if you're a good fit for the opportunity they have. So staring into space because they're not in the same space as you. Sometimes we lose consciousness of the fact that we're actually in a room with somebody who is going to make a decision on whether I get a job or not, which is potentially going to impact my future, right? So don't be staring into space. That's the next mistake people normally make is staring into space. The next one is having nearby distractions, and again, it kind of segues into what I said before. Having distractions on standby, like again, the fact that it's virtual doesn't mean you should think of it like as abstract. Think of it like you're in the room. So don't put a virtual background and then have your kids in the room who will distract you. Right? If you can't avoid it, then that it is what it is. But make sure you let the interviewers know, like, hey, situations arose and I couldn't find help to watch my child, and so they're here with me. Right? In that way, you've kind of given that disclaimer. But don't be distracted. Don't have distractions in the room where you're doing your interviews, right? Having nearby distractions is a bad look, right? Don't have a second screen. Again, I'm very big on this one because we know that it's virtual. I feel like I can have resources, and that's an advantage. Yes, you can, but organize them in the same screen so that you're not taking your focus off the camera. I hope this makes sense, right? Avoid distractions. So having distractions is a mistake. Because again, the people on the other side, they are focused on you, and if they're in the room by themselves and you're distracted, they can tell because you're not paying attention. You're losing focus. You're missing questions. You're saying, hey, can you repeat what you just said? When it's not a connection issue, right? So that's, distraction is something you want to avoid. One of the things that it's, and again, because we are in this new normal where we are working from home, life is happening from the house, so you have your kids with you. I'm so grateful that schools are back open now. Those days of digital learning, it was a hassle, right? If you had an interview, having your kids somewhere and having to watch them and do interviews or work was difficult, but it's still, if you can, please avoid any of those kind of distractions. If you can, let your kids be somewhere else. If it's possible, let your pets be far from you. Right? I've been in meetings and important sessions where you are going through these things and then you hear the dog barking at the back. Not a good look. Right? Not a good look. So there's so many things like that. Anything that will be a distraction, take it away. Make sure your space is private. Make sure it's quiet. Make sure there's nobody else in the room. If it's possible, make sure you are soundproofed enough to where your pets, the shows your kids are watching, if they're watching Cocomelon in the other room, it's not being it's not being heard across your meeting. So number four mistake people make during virtual interviews is having buffering connections. That blue circle that just comes and then your face freezes in the middle of in the middle of something, you're saying something and then you're like, that is a bad look. So again, it's sometimes it's not your fault. Your internet is internet, right? It could be due to the weather. It could be so. If you're home and there's portions of the house that have stronger connection than the other places, stay where you have the best connection. Right? Um, you don't want to have your signal hang while you're explaining some important concepts. It's going to you're going to lose your audience. You don't want to have that situation happen. So if there's connectivity issue, go somewhere else. If your internet is not the best at home, let's say you have AT&T and T and it's not strong when you are at a certain place, then don't be there. Find somewhere where it's going to be strong. And a lot of times, this is one part people don't think about. If you're going to be using any of this like Zoom, Teams, Google Meets, Hangouts, any of these other platforms from your computer, it's going to be sharing resources with every other thing else that's running on your laptop or your machine, your system. Okay, where am I going? If you have an interview, please close out the things you don't need. It's part of that distraction thing that I was talking about earlier. But close out anything that will be competing for resources, right? If you have other heavy software running on your laptop, it's likely going to distract you. It's likely going to be a distraction for you as you go through the process, as you know, it's not just distract, but it's going to be contending for resources with your system. So now your laptop is prone to hanging. Your Zoom is because Zoom is looking for resources to use. It's going to hang at some point, right? So if your laptop is not top of the line and everything, don't have 20,000 tabs on your browser open. That can slow down your Zoom or any of these platforms you're using, right? And then you get that buffer and you think it's the internet when it's really your computer is overworked, right? It's doing too much at the same time. So close out the things you're not using that you don't require for the interview that you're having. And make sure you have good Wi-Fi connections. And then the other mistake people make. So we are at number 5 now. Number 5 mistake people make when they do virtual interviews is they connect right at the very last minute, right? Your interview is for 12 p.m. and you're joining 11:59:30. You're running a risk because if anything breaks, if there's any emergencies, if there's any issues, you're likely going to be in trouble. Now you're going to be late for your interview, and now the people that will be talking to you are waiting for you to join and wondering why you haven't joined, right? Give yourself a safe buffer. But last minute connection, that's always that's it's a risk. You're taking a risk because if anything works, let's say the link you have is not working, and sometimes maybe you click on the link and there's an A missing that's not part of the link. It's anything can throw it off, and then now you're frantic trying to figure out what's wrong with the network or what's wrong with the connection. The link is not working. You're trying to call recruiter frantically, trying to call your whoever your point of contact is, and you're stressed. That's connecting last minute. You already had this. You knew this interview was coming up. At least 15 minutes, 10 minutes, 5 minutes at the worst, right? Just think of it like imagine getting to a physical interview and you're getting there. Your interview starts by 12 and you're arriving 11:59. That means you're walking through the door and it's 12:01 already. All right. So you don't want to do that. You want to be there once your interviewers connect. If they will meet you, in the room, in the virtual room, where you're wherever the interview is holding. Give yourself some buffer and think of it like things can go wrong. Things can go south with this connection with the link. At least you have a buffer. You have some time to call to figure out what's going on, to check your email, check the instructions, and make sure you're not making any mistakes. So that's connecting last minute. And then the next one, other mistake people make because they think it's virtual, so they just put on anything. Like you just throw on something you find, you wear, put on a hoodie. You're just like you're rolling out because hey, it's virtual. It's a virtual interview. No, it's an interview. You have to at least look like you're taking it seriously. If you want them to take you seriously, then take yourself seriously. Take the interview and the process seriously. Show them you're taking this seriously. Dress appropriately, right? Dress appropriately. Dress like again. Yes, maybe the conditions are different. You might not need to wear a suit and a tie, but think of it like this: if that's the culture of work for them, you know, then do what they want to see. Give them what they want to see, right? That's who you're going to be working with, And yes, the job is probably a remote job, and you won't be going into the office, and so there's quote unquote no dress code, but you want to make a good impression. So don't just put on anything, right? Put on your shirts, your business casuals, your business attires. Show up for the interview like you're prepared. You're still trying to make a good impression on people who are going to make a decision concerning your future. In a sense, an aspect of your future, your career is a very big part of your future. And so you want to show up and show out that, like, show up and make sure you gain the respect of anybody looking at you. You don't want them to lose concentration on what you're saying because um, you're dressed in a very untidy fashion. So please don't just throw on anything. The next mistake people make is sitting in the messy room. Again, you can see behind my screen right now. You can see the back, the frame at the back. You can see. Don't If you're going to show your background, then make sure it's tidy, make sure it's decent, make sure you give them a view to look at, because again, you're making an overall impression, right? Give them something good to look at, because they're looking. That's how the eyes work. It will see what you show it. So don't sit in a messy room. A lot of people do that where they don't have things put together. It's chaotic. um, so make sure you position your camera, position yourself, let all the mess be behind the camera, right? And then let all the good stuff, let the best angle of the room be what you're showing during your interviews. Again, one of the beautiful and amazing things with most of this platforms is they have the option for virtual backgrounds. Zoom has this, and Google Meet has this feature where you can blow out the background. You blur it, so it's blurry. Nobody can really see what's behind you. It's not like, it makes it look like it's transparent behind you, like gives that blur. I really love those ones because then I'm not putting up a fake background like some California bridge or something, or an office space that I'm not really in. Those, if chaos is going on behind you, then use a virtual background, right? If you have things that are sentimental in your, that might be distracting in your room, and there's nowhere else to go, use a virtual background, or just blur it out, right? Blur out your background, but again, make sure it's not messy behind you. Make sure the room is not messy. It's very, 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 very important that we keep this in mind. Um, the next one is people just go and sit in the dark. So you have your camera on, but we can't see you, right? That's not a good start. As much as you can, make sure your room is well lit. So it doesn't have to be. You don't have to buy the ring lights from Walmart or Amazon or any of those things. If you have them, fine. But for one interview, except that's something you use all the time, you're going live all the time, or you're an influencer or whatever. You don't need to buy all the lighting equipment, all of that, because you have an interview coming up. Uh, but you have sunlight. Position yourself. Most interviews I am aware of are happening during the day, not at night. So if you're in a dark space, then that's probably because you have the blinds closed, shut, or any of those things. So make sure those are open. Make sure you're getting sunlight inside. Turn on your lights, let it be bright, like it's really lighted up in here. And I have the behind me, the windows, the blinds are open, and so you can see the light hitting my face and it's reflecting. It's very bright. So that's it's a good thing to do. Don't sit in a dark room. Don't just close the blinds and all of that. No, let it be bright, so at least you want the people to see you, right? That's why they chose to do an interview, a virtual interview on camera. Natural lighting. If you have extra lights, good. But position yourself where the sun is in your face, and you should be good. The next mistake people make during virtual interviews is moving fast, moving too fast. You're talking fast. You're trying to get through. And this is not just for virtual interviews. It doesn't apply just for when you're doing interviews over Zoom or any of this platform. Um, they don't speed through your answers, don't speed through your responses. Take your time. Again, they are right there in front of you. They might not be in the same room as you, your interviewers, I mean, but they are right there. They are in a virtual room with you. So think of it like that. There you can see them. You don't have to speed through things. I know interviewing can be stressful, especially depending on what role it is. Maybe your situation that you really, really need a job or something, and then you have that duress that you're under, or that level of your stress levels are high. Relax, relax, and that's why you don't want to rush into the interview. You don't want to be getting there like exactly. You don't want to be joining the call when it, right on the exact time where the interview is supposed to start. Don't do anything that will stress you out, that will cause you to be uncomfortable. Get plenty of rest. Make sure you're well rested. Make sure you're well prepared. Because again, stress is a product of sometimes lack of preparation. Like, hey, I don't feel like I'm ready for this. I'm not in the best mind frame, or what have you. So don't speak too fast, don't rush through things. Make sure you're taking your time to break down any concepts you're explaining. Again, you have to assume that you are, the technology might not be on your side, right? And so certain things that you could breeze through might be highlighted more. If you have an accent like myself, you have to also pay attention to that. Don't just breeze through stuff, and you want to ensure that the person listening to you, who is not opportune to be sitting physically with you in the room, can still understand everything you're saying. You don't want to, because that's how you get a job. You don't understand you, you're not getting any job, right? So the other um, that's the other mistake people make, is just speaking too fast, moving fast, and then some people don't even do any testing. So the other mistake is you don't get any practice, especially if it's your first time, right? Don't try to wing it. Make sure your camera is working. Make sure your computer is working. Make sure you've tested out everything before your interview, right? If you want to be successful during an interview, preparation is key, right? You have to prepare. You have to prepare, right? So check your technology. Make sure your computer works. Make sure your Zoom works. Make sure you remember your username and password for your Zoom, so you're not thinking of what's my Teams password during the when you're about to join the call. Arrive on time. That will help you relax. 5 minutes is good, right? You don't have to be there 15 minutes, because you're not. Normally, I recommend 15 to 30 minutes for physical interviews, because you have to find parking, get familiar with the place, locate all of that. But it's virtual, so you don't need to be there too early. But 5 minutes gives you some cushion, 5 to 7 minutes, in case anything goes off, or you're thrown off by anything. You have enough cushion to um, recalibrate and resolve such issues. So arrive early. Make sure the background is clear. It's not distracting. It's not messy. And if things are chaotic where you are beyond your control, use a virtual background, right? To blow out your background, whatever it is. But don't show your interviewers anything messy behind you. Then dress like you would for an in-person interview, right? Dress like you would for an in-person interview. Your business outfits, your professional outfits. You're a professional. Show up like one, right? Show up like a professional. That's what you are. It's an interview at the end, right? And look into the camera when you're speaking. So make sure you're making eye contact. Look them in the eye. I'm like, hey, I'm here, right? I'm here. Not don't be all creepy like that, but look into the camera. Because that means you're kind of making eye contact with your interviewer. So there's a connection you're making there. Um, have your have your resume close by. Have a notepad and something to write with, so you can take notes. Have your resume close by if you need to reference it for anything. um, Something to write with a pen. Have stuff that can, those things you can reference. And then be aware of your body language on camera. Don't Make sure your body language is not speaking disinterest, like you're not interested in the role, or you're thrown off, or you're pissed off at the question that was asked of you. Be very conscious of the vibes that your body is sending. Your body language is saying, what's your body language saying? Be very cautious of that. And then take a pause, breathe, before you answer questions. you know Calm down, breathe, and make sure you've gathered your thoughts before you respond, right? So that you don't rush in, you can pick your words. You're not just brrr and then just going and then nobody's hearing you and it's talking too fast. So breathe. Take a breath, take a deep breath before you start speaking. Have a backup plan, right? This is very important in case your internet on your laptop fails, your laptop is having issues. Let your phone be handy. Like, have a backup plan, especially when it comes to technology, because technology can disappoint you, right? So have a backup plan, have backup internet. If Wi-Fi fails, can I use my personal hotspot? Is that ready to go? Right? If my computer can't go, is my phone ready to go? It's very important to have a backup plan, and that's why joining 5 minutes early, 7 minutes early gives you a cushion. So if the plan A fails, you can easily start transitioning to plan B, and you still show up and you're on time. Um, and then the last suggestion for preparatory step will be minimize distractions. Again, find a quiet place in a quiet location, void of distractions, and that's where you do your interview. Right? Do your interview in a quiet place. Don't have your pets running around. Don't have your kids running around. Don't have Cocomelon playing at the background or anything like that. It's very, very important that we don't have anything distracting us. Don't have your spouse at the background because you have a virtual background in place and nobody can see activity going on behind. And so now you have your kids behind you and you're trying to shush them. No, avoid distractions, minimize distractions, and you should be in good shape. All right. Well, that's all of my points. For how to mistakes to avoid in a virtual interview. I hope you gained something from this, and I want to keep doing this. Again, this is going to be 12:30 every week. We're having these conversations. Um, so thanks for joining me, and if you're watching this on replay, make sure you uh, drop a comment. If you have any questions or any other career related topics you want us to talk about, definitely share that with us. Send us a DM, send us a message, or be in the comments, and we'll definitely talk about that. Thanks again for hanging out with me. Again, this has been virtual mistake or 10 mistakes to avoid during virtual interviews. I hope you found this useful. Thanks again, and I will talk to you 12:30 p.m. Next